kill for that leather jacket. You were a king when you wore it. Don't forget the fact that Raider was one of the only shows putting Asians on TV. By season 2, you were almost exclusively among us, the shopkeepers and immigrants. We said more than unsubtitled Cantonese. We played more than kung fu masters or dragon assassins. They even gave you a son. That 6-year-old street urchin, Moto, season 2, episode 6, Mercy for the Damned, who you rescued from a drug ring. I used to think I looked like that little kid. I'd imagined I was him and you were my real father come to take me away. It's my favorite episode. It's the promo they show every time some history special mentions Raider. You, trench-coated, half-shadowed, holding that little Asian boy in your arms, staring into the dark rain falling all around you and straight into my soul. And still, as it happened, 2 seasons was plenty enough for Antonin Aubert, the actor who played you. By the end, he had movie offers, endorsement deals. He didn't fight the network when there was cancel talk. He had a face that could play rough like he had on Raider, but a mutability underneath that couldn't be taught. He could play the wholesome friend, sadistic politician, principled lord, gay wizard villain. Typecast proof. Antonin Aubert was dark and sexy and on his way to further greatness, and history will show the wall of film, television, music, theater, and exemplary Presidential Citizens Awards hanging somewhere in his cliffside palace near Malibu are nothing to scoff at. 40 years later, you'd be hard-pressed to hear Antonin Aubert ever mention the show anymore. The guy was so entwined with American pop culture despite not even being American that one could barely think of movies without picturing his godly, symmetrical face. Still, time will always bend forward. He was 71 this year. He got the ovations at award shows, but belonged to the cadre of legends now, taken both more and less seriously by modern folk. He'd pop in for brief, pivotal guest spots on prestige television shows and promote his memoirs and his charities without doing much of anything these days. We all moved on. This month's cover of Metropole was a profile of Antonin's son, Hadrian, an art house twink with huge eyes. At only 22 years old, already one of the biggest stars of our age for playing a baby-faced serial killer in a terrible movie called Gorgeous Demons last year. He won 30 awards for it and trended every time he tweeted. I saw the mock-up of the Metropole cover last week in the office, hanging on the window wall near the art department. He looked a lot like you, Raider. The lips were the same, and so was the scraggly hair. He was wearing a jewel-embroidered Gucci corset that hugged his skeleton ribs and a shag blanket hanging off his shoulders. The editing had been done so as to accentuate the circles under his eyes and gold leaf and swirls on his cheeks. In slick white font around his head were the words, "Mad about the boy." It was the gayest thing I'd ever seen. It sort of worked. Sort of. I was picturing the innocent slope of those lips when I woke, moved my head, turning to my right, found Gil still asleep and breathing his feathery breaths into my armpit. I wasn't much used to such close contact with him, at least without our dicks involved. I reminded myself that I did in fact like the way Gil made me laugh, also the way he paid for dinner. I didn't believe it was a power thing. In the pit of my heart, I knew Gil just thought paying for dinner was a sweet thing to do, which it was, and I liked him so much better because I knew he thought like this when I never could. I moved my arm down, slowly, and his eyelids fluttered. For half a second, he noticed me in front of him, then roused himself awake, shimmying up around my shoulder to rest his head next to mine. "Too early. Go back to sleep," he mumbled. You'd think he was sweet too. I didn't know this for sure, of course. There were no queers on Raider, not that I remember. You were a gruff straight boy prone to violence and a single word doing the work of 10, so maybe you would have looked at us curled together in my bed and felt rage or fear. Whatever it is that moves people like the founder of Chick-fil-A or the Alabama State Senate to argue extermination. But I hoped you wouldn't. As though he'd been waiting for it, Gil propped himself on an elbow, squinting at me. He didn't look 6 years older than I was. We'd have had more problems if he did. There were minute but definitive differences between us. He'd always had big eyes, which he used often to convey meaning without fully realizing their devastating effects on people around him.